Following one of Donald Trump's most controversial speeches claiming Sadiq Khan is terrible and the UK want to go to Sharia law, well, the London mayor hit back, calling him Islamophobic. But there are legitimate concerns to be had about this shadow system of approximately 85 Sharia courts operating in the UK.
Yeah, well, joining us now is Director of Domestic Policy at Pickthall House, Jacob Williams. Jacob, good to see you. Thank you very much for joining us. So, right, Sharia court, they're not Sharia courts, they're Sharia councils, from what I understand. Yeah. How do they operate and what do they actually do?
Well, in principle, Sharia councils are supposed to be voluntary arbitration tribunals. They're not a parallel legal system. They're not courts. They don't have any legal authority. So under a long-standing principle of British common law, reaffirmed in the 1996 Arbitration Act, everyone has the right to use voluntary arbitration outside a court, including faith-based arbitration. Now, there are legitimate concerns about how these councils actually operate, whether there's fully informed consent of everyone who uses them, and we fully support measures to address those concerns. But the solution is not to ban them or to say that they're a parallel legal system when they're not. They're a system of voluntary tribunals.
But isn't this the problem when it particularly looks at not just religions, but actually just sort of lifestyle systems? I'm not quite sure what to use the correct word. When you look at a faith like Islam, it's not just about an introspective way that you live your life. I mean, there are rules in Islam. There are suggested laws. It was originally sort of a legal code rather than what we would have thought of as a religion. And therefore, it carries that sort of cultural weight. If you've grown up in this faith your entire life, if everyone around you is in this faith, perhaps if you're a woman who has known nothing else, will you sort of know or have the ability to seek redress in a British court if everything you do is through one of these Sharia councils?
I think that rather than engaging in rather tendentious theology, we should actually look at what Muslims say that they believe, which we've done a great deal of research on. And the majority of Muslims do not support imposing a different legal system upon Britain or imposing it upon
No, I'm not saying that, but amongst themselves. A husband and wife, for instance. We know that very often women in these situations don't have the same freedoms that women do from more Western-oriented cultures. I mean, that can be an issue.
We should distinguish between the idea of a religion having moral rules, which is not unique to Islam and is also true of Christianity and other faiths, and the cultural situation in which some women may not have been given the full information about the fact that these are not legally binding courts. And so we fully support a reform to, first of all, prevent them from calling themselves courts. They should be referred to as Sharia councils, not courts. Secondly, everyone who uses them should be given, as a matter of requirement, the full legal picture. Given the explicit information, these are not legally binding judgments, and they're not legally obliged to follow them.
Are you disputing the idea that I think is fairly well understood amongst historians of Islam, that there is a more tendentious relationship between the separation of church and state for the followers of the Islamic faith than there is, for example, for Christians who traditionally do have this concept going back hundreds of years, that there is a separation in many ways between church and state? For Muslim societies, very often there isn't.
Well, both of these traditions are actually very complex and have multiple interpretations. We could look, for example, at the new Catholic integralists who think that the Pope should, in fact, control the state. There are views like this in Christianity.
We would rightly say that's extreme.
Absolutely. And we rightly say that certain extreme Muslim views are also extreme. And the majority of Muslims don't actually hold those views. The majority interpret Sharia as a set of moral rules that they follow that are then not obliged to impose upon others.
Jacob, just one final question. So is Sadiq Khan right when he says that Donald Trump is being Islamophobic?
I don't think it's particularly helpful to use the term Islamophobia because it creates really what is a dialogue of the deaf. I think it's much more helpful to say that Trump's statement is just false, that Sadiq Khan is not an Islamist, he doesn't want to impose Sharia law. Whatever you think of his policies, there's absolutely no evidence for this. There's no evidence he's anything other than a fairly progressive left-wing liberal.
Yeah, and so people have no need to worry about Sharia councils in this country?
Well, that's not the claim that I've been making. I've been claiming they need reform and there are legitimate concerns, but they don't need to be abolished.
OK. Jacob, thank you very much. That's our Director of Domestic Policy at Pickthall House, Jacob Williams.